Healthcare has more data than almost any industry on earth. So why does it feel like it's locked in a filing cabinet and we've lost the key? Even worse than that, we haven't lost the key, we're just not allowed to use it. I don't know that there's like something inherently evil about that, but to me as a private citizen, I take a step back and I look at that and I'm like, how are we letting that slide? There's a very weird cultural tradition in the healthcare industry, and that is when a big horizontal company either enters or makes a very public show of trying to expand greatly within healthcare, and they struggle, there's almost like a celebration from the talking heads. Like see, we told you, healthcare is complex. You don't understand. You couldn't possibly understand. And now the biggest AI companies and really just the biggest companies in the world, fueled by this sort of rapid AI innovation that we see occurring across industries, are not only entering healthcare, but looking to expand in healthcare as a major growth vertical, and they're walking into the same maze. So let's talk about how it's going to go this time. So like we said, I refer to this as healthcare's hipsterism. You don't understand the complexity, the data is messing, it's complicated, it doesn't work that way. And the regulation in healthcare, honestly, even confuses itself sometimes. So who actually benefits from slowing things down? It's the incumbent moat. The incumbent moat always. So introduce the challengers that are top of mind for me. On the one hand, you've got OpenAI. On the other, you've got Anthropic. I think anytime I talk about one, I find myself talking about both. Because I personally am a fan of both companies for different reasons and for different sort of strengths and different sort of evolutions in the future that I see, is within the last month, really going back to the JPM conference in January, you saw both of these organizations making big pushes, not only in their called horizontal development, but specifically in their pursuit of healthcare. With OpenAI, you saw ChatGPT for healthcare. With Anthropic, you saw a similar, and Claude for healthcare, Anthropic for healthcare. From my perspective, I see OpenAI going in more of the consumer direction, right? So ChatGPT for healthcare, much the same way the audience that they're courting globally and the usership they're courting of ChatGPT at large. When I shift my attention over to Anthropic, I see Anthropic laying the groundwork for more of an enterprise approach, aligning with organizations that are best suited to deploy, call it enterprise automation, using Claude, whether it's Claude Code for more of a technical audience or a Claude Cowork for a less technical audience. So now let's talk about the real bottleneck that these companies and others like them are going to face. That is getting access to the data. Getting access to the enterprise data, getting access to the EHR data, which currently in the healthcare industry sits at the top of the food chain as far as affecting all the workflows downstream, any sort of automation that you would hope to do. A lot of that automation is going to flow downstream of the EHR data. And yet that is a bottleneck that has plagued this industry as long as it's existed. Good line. Get up. What's the cost of pretending that this is simpler than it is? Number one, you're not going to be able to get all the data that you need through sort of legacy pathways. It's going to be incomplete, or call it moded in some way. You're going to pay an arm and a leg for it, usually, and you're giving time for the oligopoly of sorts to outflank you, while you're sort of beating your head against the wall and things not really working from a data plumbing perspective the way that you needed to. It gives the incumbents time to outflank whatever the value prop of your tech is and sort of do it from the dominant position of record, even if it's inferior technology and it takes a lot longer to come about. And so I think that's one of the biggest reasons why companies with true technology differentiation need to be looking beyond legacy pathways and what I would call legacy plumbing. Healthcare has more data than almost any industry on earth. So why does it feel like it's locked in a filing cabinet and we've lost the key? Even worse than that, we haven't lost the key, we're just not allowed to use it.
But I need to talk about context for a second. AI doesn't just need the data, it needs the business logic that sits between the database and the applications trying to activate that data. That's the layer that everyone's now coming for. Epic's been defending it fiercely because for years it was their biggest asset to clients, but now it's got to be out in the open more for clients to be able to activate 100% of the data that they own.
I live in Madison. I started my career at Epic. I have plenty of good things to say about the positive impacts they've had in many different areas of the market, and what a positive place it is to work and the positive culture there. All good stuff.
Epic isn't necessarily the villain here. They're the foundation of an older way. The standardized data model, the stability they brought to this market, that's actually what is making this AI and infrastructure moment possible for a lot of organizations. But the new way is going to demand that they give up more of the business logic control layer, and that is definitely going to make them uncomfortable. But it has to be said that the foundation they built is very real.
Every health system has procured a large medical charting database, also known as the electronic health record, known in the industry as the system of record. It's where all the data goes in and around a hospital setting. Now imagine you had a home office, and imagine you needed a new filing cabinet. And imagine you bought the absolute top of the line filing cabinet, and there it is. All your data is going in there. And then you say, okay, I want to retrieve some of that data. And that filing cabinet maker says, oh no, you can't do that. Well, you can, but you're going to have to pay us extra for that. And you're not actually going to be able to get it the way that you want. Interesting problem, right? So there are a lot of lies that we tell ourselves, especially in the health system side of the industry, which is that we have access to that data. But having the data is not the same thing as being able to act on it.
Agent Factory is going to be Epic's immediate answer to the agent connectivity question. They pushed it really hard at HIMSS, and it does seem genuinely very interesting and like a good leap forward. For health systems that don't need overly complex solutions, this is going to be very useful. Same with the Cogito APIs they announced last fall, opening up API transactions out of their reporting universe in a way they hadn't before. These are real modern tools. They're definitely not nothing.
That was a good one. We like that. We like that. What breaks first when scale actually hits? The word that's coming to mind is visibility. That's not a new problem. That's not an AI-born problem. AI is going to exacerbate that. But visibility, many health systems and health plans and pharmaceutical companies honestly struggle with this today, probably more than they would care to admit. The answer to the question of what breaks when scale hits, I think is visibility, and that's somewhere where I would like to see enterprises focus more as a strategic advantage rather than thinking about it like some sort of backroom security cost center of sorts.
The sheer number of data points in Epic's Cosmos, 250 million plus patient records, one of the most powerful companies in healthcare, making this a central AI play backed by Microsoft and OpenAI and others. You can say what you want about the lock-in, but that is going to provide a tremendous amount of value on its own.
But just the current climate of their technology ecosystem and the cybersecurity threat landscape around that is already a serious enough issue where there's clear vulnerability in our critical infrastructure that is our healthcare industry. And so when you open that up to any sort of system of artificial intelligence, machine learning, or automated action, that's of course somewhere we want to be really careful about what data that has access to, what data it has access to change, and how it can write back to the overall record. So I am a huge proponent of proper governance and change management and workflow implementation when it comes to these things. But if you have all those boxes checked and you have alignment from all of the key stakeholders across an organization in those areas of governance and compliance and security and workflow efficiency, common sense, does this just make common sense for us to implement? You can check all those boxes and that EHR bottleneck is still going to be there because you are unable to get the data you need, when you need, how you need in anything close to real time.
We're losing them in the ceiling. I don't know if that's good or bad. Oh no, it's coming back. What's one AI promise that completely collapses without real-time data movement? I think anything agentic having to do with clinical workflows, you just can't do it without real-time data movement. Real-time event monitoring, AI or no AI, that's been one of the hardest things about the bottleneck of data is being able to actually do real-time event monitoring that isn't specifically built by that system of record. So you're kind of limited to their pace of innovation. And then RCM. RCM and revenue uplift is, I think, a huge one that people don't necessarily think of because you don't need necessarily real-time data, but the closer to real-time you can get, the more you can catch from a revenue uplift perspective. And that's really important too. So I feel like for the flood of systems coming into healthcare that have either been in healthcare doing this or now entering healthcare don't necessarily appreciate sort of what a choke point this could be for them.
So what EHRs actually optimize for and what they were historically built for are things like medical charting, things like billing, things like retrospective documentation. They solve the problem of what's already happened, telling you about what's already happened, not what should happen next. So for those keeping score at home, you're gonna have difficulty actually getting in there to get the complete data set of what already happened. And it is particularly not optimized to help you with what's coming, what needs to happen next. And so as we think about this technology revolution that is befalling our country in many industries, including healthcare, the ability to power what action needs to happen next is at the root of all automation, yet health systems are flying completely blind in their attempt to do that, other than what the EHR vendor explicitly tells them they're allowed to do with their own data that's sitting there in that billion-dollar filing cabinet that they've already paid for.
This interoperability story across the industry is definitely super nuanced. On TEFCA and care quality, Epic is actually leading participation, being very early to the party and bringing all of their customer base with them, not dragging their feet. So credit where it's due, they are moving towards trusted exchange there, but they also know that that is a limited data set that would be covered between those exchanges.
What do executives fear more, lawsuits or loss of control? When I hear that question, I'm thinking about health system executives first to narrow down the answer. I think historically, the boogeyman that was, quote unquote, you're violating our IP was very effective and still kind of is very effective. But info blocking rules and what's coming out of the Office of the National Coordinator and the ASTP, the Assistant Secretary for Technology Policy, they've made info blocking rules really clear, and claiming your IP is being violated sort of ambiguously isn't going to cut it anymore. So I think there's definitely been a shift in executives, especially at the top health systems, that loss of control is more of an existential risk.
So for those of you out there that understand the technology implications here and sort of the plumbing underneath it all, they might say, well, hey, Chris, doesn't the vendor, don't the EHRs release their own APIs? In this case, we're talking about Epic. Doesn't Epic have a pretty robust API program? And I would say, yes, they do. They do have APIs available, some for public consumption, some that they only make available to their health system clients, but there are severe limitations with this. The first is going to be cost. And if it was just about cost, that would be one thing. If it was just about the double dipping, that would be one thing. But it's not, because even when you pay those fees, you're not able to just hand pick. You're going to have to stitch together maybe a handful of APIs that work in different ways, cobble together the most of the data that you're looking for, probably not completely. And then again, you're sort of in this like workaround territory. You're in workaround land. You don't actually have a working solution. Forget about getting into anything AI and agentic that is going to need access to the source of truth in real time or close to real time for it to be able to actually drive the automation and the workflow improvements that you need it to. So the real question isn't, do we have the data? It's who's allowed to decide what happens when the data changes? Because if the answer isn't us, in this case, the health system, then what you have is a locked filing cabinet. When it comes to adopting any sort of manner of agentic artificial intelligence or machine learning that has an immediate impact on clinical workflows in the day-to-day, you're going to need the ability not only to read the archive of the record, but to decide in real time what action needs to happen next. And if you're solely reliant on the EHR vendor to be able to make progress there, that is a really expensive bottleneck that the industry cannot afford. And even if the industry can afford it, you and I as patients cannot.